Enemy's Nerd here, and welcome to my International Women's Day special. With video games becoming more diverse, having more female characters taking the leading role, we have gotten better written, more rounded, relatable ones as of recent year. I'm sure we all encountered a female character that we really latched onto. Main character, side character, protagonist, or antagonist, no matter her role in the game, she caught our attention. For reasons such as we watched her grow and develop over the course of the story, she's representation we longed for but hardly get to see, she became our inspiration for how we want to be so we look up to her, or her tragic backstory resonates with us so she became our comfort character. Or for some of my LGBT fam out there, we think she's hot and she became our gay or bisexual awakening and or fictional crush. Whatever the reason may be, her importance as a character in our eyes made her something really special. To all the girls, gays, and days who love gaming, I'm sure we all have a female video game character that became one of our personal favorites. I know I have a good handful, and for this International Women's Day special, I will be listing my top 10 favorite female characters in video games. Actually, nah, you know what? We're not gonna do my top 10, we're doing my top 5, and this is gonna be a yearly tradition on my channel. There are so many amazing female video game characters, some that have been forgotten about that deserve a spotlight shine on them, and coming up with 10 just for a one and done video was really hard to do. So to make sure these amazing characters get the spotlight they deserve, I definitely want to make this a yearly tradition on my channel, so feel free to list your own characters and maybe I'll consider them for next year's video. Well, actually, next year's video is just gonna be the 5 that didn't make it on this list, but you know what I mean. Also, lastly, I want to apologize. I did not mean to have so many characters on this list that came from depressing backstories or settings. I swear that was an accident. Anyway, with that out of the way, let's get this list started. Even though I do have an issue with Dishonored 2, I will admit I do like the addition of having Emily Caldwell being a choice you play as. Playing as her was pretty fun, since if you do accept the Outsider's gift, because there is an option to reject it, she has a unique set of powers that are different from Corvo's and honestly a little more interesting, even though his powers do get an upgrade for D2. Dishonored 2 takes place years after the events of the original Dishonored, and in Dishonored 2, Corvo had trained Emily on how to protect herself. Understandably, after Dowd assassinated the previous Empress and kidnapped Emily, Corvo would want his daughter to be able to take care of herself and decided to train her. That day where Emily's training comes into use does happen when this annoying bitch comes in, takes the throne, and makes Emily the enemy of the Empire. Thanks to her father's training, Emily is a resourceful young woman who manages on her own journey. Watching this character progress when it comes to these games, she went from being the typical princess that you save into a badass assassin that sets off to reclaim what's rightfully hers. One thing I really like about Dishonored 2 is giving the main character dialogue. Sure, it breaks immersion, but depending on the chaos level, you can hear the difference in the main character's tone, especially in Emily. When it comes to the chaos level or the morality level as you play the game, she can be a ruthless assassin to later become a dictator or stay true to herself, still being that kind empress much like her mother before her. Emily was an interesting protagonist and it was nice having her story come to a close. If you play both these games, it was honestly pretty cool seeing how she turned out after the ordeal she went through when she was a kid. Even though you had a choice between Emily or Corvo to play through Dishonored 2, D2's story felt more like it was Emily's story rather than Corvo's. I'm not sure what Dishonored 3 has in store for Emily or Corvo. I know the series is at rest, but personally, I would like to have Dishonored 2 just wrap up their story and focus on a completely new cast of characters, and maybe have Death of the Outsider not be canon. That story was awful. I did not like how Billy was handled in that one. Silent Hill doesn't have that many female characters to choose from, but Heather is on this list as being a great character for one of my favorite survival horror franchises in gaming. Trying to keep her segment short, Heather has a really interesting story when it comes to the Silent Hill mythos, being the second reincarnation of Alessa Gillespie. Meaning, when it comes to the Silent Hill games, 3 of them have an overarching story that Heather is tied to when it comes to one of her past lives. If only Konami could pull their heads out of their asses and do something with the Silent Hill license, I would like to see these 3 games get modern remakes. I would say re-releases, but considering that someone at Konami either lost or threw away the source codes for the final builds of Silent Hill 2 and 3, resulting in a shit HD collection being made by an inexperienced developer working on incomplete builds, I doubt the other games have been properly backed up. This is why game preservation needs to be taken seriously, people. When it comes to Heather as a main character, I can understand why some people don't like her because she is moody and she does tend to lose her temper when she gets frustrated. frustrated, when that's the point. She's a teenager. Honestly, with how she's written, she feels realistic when it comes to her reactions and her emotions as a teenager. She feels like a living, breathing person. Heather is no longer a child and not yet an adult, so how she reacts to this scary situation she's thrown into is rather realistic, especially when she's dealing with annoying ass characters. Heather even has her moments of being vulnerable, yet she's strong, being resourceful and adapting to her situation. She really does feel like the final girl. I love how Heather is handled when it comes to her character, and I would love to see her make some type of return to the franchise. A reboot in the franchise, having Heather with a decent role in the game can re-establish the lore of the cult from the first game. I'm not saying I mind how Silent Hill became an anthology series with a new character, new story, and new set of monsters per se. I'm just saying it would be awesome for the classic character to make a return. I love this girl. If you've been living under a rock or never gave Borderlands a chance, then let me introduce you to a little Mitzi that has a personality that's as explosive as her field of expertise. Tinytina debuted in Borderlands 2 during the train jacking mission where the Vault Hunters aid the Crimson Raiders trying to recover the Vault Key from Handsome Jack. And right off the bat, Tinytina isn't handled like the typical child sidekick that overstays their welcome, becoming annoying the longer they stay around. Granted, she's not around that much in the main story, but with her appearances in the DLC, Tinytina really does feel like the little sister of the group. Like the main Crimson Raiders are a weird blended family. That rings more true considering Brick and Mordecai basically adopted her and she's a member of their B team in Borderlands 3. I really love that Tina does have her moments in Borderlands 2 that really flesh out her character, like her DLC, Tinitina's Assault on Dragon Keep, where she's basically playing D&D with Brick, Mordecai, and Lilith, where it's obvious that this girl is in the denial stages of grief and she can't accept that Roland's gone. Of course, with some constant pushing by the adults towards the end of her campaign, she does acknowledge that yes, she is aware that he's gone, and she gets a chance to say goodbye. When it comes to Borderlands 3, I love that she returns and she's still that hilarious, spunky, explosive expert all grown up, and I'm really glad she's getting another DLC. If there's a Borderlands 4, I hope she makes another return. Of course, I'm going to add my favorite girl in blue. I love American McGee's twisted takes on Alice in Wonderland, and I look forward to the TV show and of course the third game whenever they come out. Watching Alice, this mentally ill young woman dealing with her trauma and extreme survivor's guilt, was an interesting ride. In case you know nothing about these games, American McGee's Alice and Alice Madness Returns are a dark reimagining of the classic Alice's Adventures in Wonderland books by Lewis Carroll. In these games, Alice is a grown woman that's been through a lot, such as when she was 8 years old, her family home burned down, leaving her the sole survivor while her family burned to death, and she spent most of her life hospitalized. To be more specific, going into her backstory through the memories she collected in Madness Returns and the newspaper clippings from the storybook app, Alice went through a lot after her parents died. She spent a year in the hospital recovering from her burns and spent 10 years in the asylum, so Alice is roughly 19 to 20 years old in these games. Of course, due to such a traumatic upbringing, Alice's mental well-being isn't all that great, and it reflects in her Wonderland. Wonderland has become this corrupted, twisted, and gory place where Alice isn't exactly safe. Even Alice's friends try to kill her. While watching Alice, you see this young woman trying to piece together her broken mind and uncover the truth within her suppressed memories, and you see what she's dealing with when it comes to the loss of her family. You can clearly see that Alice is just mentally ill, and it doesn't help she has a couple fuckers in her life that constantly gaslight her. Or in the case of this drunk threatening to blackmail Alice by telling authorities what Alice said when she was blacked out if Alice doesn't buy her booze. God, this girl needs better people to surround her. Despite being mentally unwell, Alice is able to overcome obstacles through Wonderland while she's able to uncover the truth. The ending of Madness Returns was pretty up in the air on whether or not Alice really got revenge for her family's demise. I hope the third game progresses her story, and I'm really excited for the TV show. When you play these games, you're basically watching this traumatized, mentally ill young woman go on a journey of self-healing, so I can understand why a lot of people hold this version of Alice Little as a comfort character. OMG, let me gush over how much I adore this girl. If you're a returning viewer who watched my Golden Ending Let's Play, you'll understand what I'm talking about. Mitzi Hunt from the Cat Lady grew on me so quickly in my first playthrough. With her tragic story, circumstances, and overall her friendship made a positive impact on the game's main character, Susan Ashworth, who is horribly depressed and has absolutely no desire to continue living. These two crossed paths when Mitzi tried answering an ad in the paper Susan put out months prior to rent the spare room in her apartment. Despite having an alternative motive motive for renting the room, driven by a personal mission, Mitzi intervened when Susan attempted to take her own life at the beginning of the game. Even lied about being Susan's daughter to get a ride in the ambulance to make sure Susan got to there okay. When you get to know Mitzi, you learn that despite her own tragedy, she is the total opposite of Susan. Mitzi has a great attitude and a good sense of humor. When you play the game and go through all sorts of fucked up shit with Mitzi, like a home invader, Mitzi and Susan grow to care about each other and become really good friends, having really good chemistry. You, the player, also grow to care about her because she's that great of a companion character. I'm not going to lie, when I first got the golden ending, I cried. I straight up bawled my eyes out when I saw the outcome of the golden ending for the first time. Mitzi is just an awesome person. It's because of her, by the end of the game, no matter the ending, Susan is able to look at the world and smile again thanks to Mitzi's friendship, and that's what makes her a great character when she's able to make such a positive impact on someone's life. We all need a Mitzi in our lives to pull us out of the darkness and show us that despite the pain, you can't give up because life is worth living.